TV. The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Welcome to another episode of In Conversation with Alethia. I am your host, Alethia O'Hara-Stevenson. On this show, we interview amazing individuals who are doing inspiring things in our community. The show will educate, it will empower, and it will inspire you. In today's episode, I am honored to have two incredibly inspiring women from right here in Dufferin County. These women are doing wonderful things in our community, and I'll start with introducing our first guest, Trisha Linton. Trisha Linton is an entrepreneur, a community activist, and a former candidate for councillor in the township of Amaranth. We also have Sofia Ceddes. She's a business owner of New Era Cleaning Solutions, and she's also a former candidate for councillor in the town of Shelburne. Amazing, amazing stories to share with you today. So welcome, Trisha, and welcome, Sofia.
Thank you
Honored
for having us.
Here.
Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I didn't dive right into your bio. I'm going to start off with you, Trisha. You've been... We're going to have fun tonight. Can you tell? So we've seen you throughout Dufferin County, but we don't really know all of the things that Trisha has been up to. You've been on some amazing committees, the diversity committee. So just dive into Trisha and tell us a little bit more about the community activist and champion.
Well, there's not much to say. I mean, it started with being asked to be on the Dufferin Diversity and Equity Inclusion. And then it just kind of just rolled from that place. You know, it was such an honor to be on that committee and to keep on going with the committee, hopefully, as the new year progresses. And, being on the Shelburne Arts and Culture Committee, I was on that for some time. But being involved in the community really took a kind of like a form of its own, and getting to know people, making relationships with people. It was so powerful to get to know people on different levels and what really spoke to their hearts about Dufferin County and being involved on that level. So the more and more I got involved, is the more and more I started to see things, more and more I started to become aware of things, and even to the point of giving food to the people in Linton. In the motel there. I did that for some time, and just making connections and dots and connecting dots and listening to different organizations being involved in homelessness, and just being involved on that level, and just seeing where people's hearts are in Dufferin County. People are passionate about where they live, and you don't find that uniqueness anywhere else. Like, there's people that are like, I grew up in Scarborough, so I'm a Scarborough girl, right? And we in Scarborough, when I was growing up at that time, so you're talking about the late 70s and the 80s and stuff like that, growing up in Scarborough, there was a sense of community because it was a lot of immigrants moving into the area. And so we had after school programs, so we got to know each other, develop great relationships with each other, and relationships that have lasted like 40 years. For the greatness of Facebook, we all connected again, So learning to be in that environment and having wonderful teachers and a wonderful vice principal, Mr. Hines, who taught us that all of us are in this together. So he created wonderful programs when I went to Cornell Public School, after school programs that, a lot of us as children and teenagers, we were latchkey kids. So a lot of our parents were single parent homes, and our both parents that went out and worked. And so you kind of had idle hands, and idle hands find things to do.
Exactly.
So, so for him to be so creative to create after school programs and getting involved and getting to know one another as students and then understanding you're just people and you want to be friends, and you didn't care about where you came from, you just had a friend and you're so happy to have that friend. And so building those connections was transferable now to moving in Dufferin County and understanding that the uniqueness of Dufferin County is that people wear their heart on their shoulders here. And loving that sense of community. I love it.
I love that. And I want to come back to the food initiative that you were doing in Melanchthon, but I want to transition over to you, Sofia, and because you talked about relationships, and I think it's absolutely powerful the fact that both of you are on set today, because it was as a result of building relationships how both of you connected. Yes. So I'm going to pivot over to you and ask you to just talk about, your connection with Trisha, the first time you met, and what inspired you the most.
So I met Trisha, the CFUW, right? And I walked in the room and I just saw this person sitting there, and she was just smiling, and I'm like, oh my goodness. I went over to her, and right away, she was open. We started talking. We started talking about, running for council, our experiences, and right away we had that connection. And it's through those networks I was able to meet this wonderful person beside me. And, after that, we continued conversation in regards to how we can actually get involved in our community. And it was a great opportunity.
Yeah. Our daughters work together.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
Which was so weird. You're right. Because small world.
Well, yeah.
My daughter, I said to her, I said, Linton. And she goes, oh, I know a Linton. And she goes, Mom, you drive her home every day. And I said, oh my goodness.
The power of connection and community.
Yeah, and it was every day that I was driving your daughter home and didn't even know. Yeah.
So I want to touch on the fact that the theme of today's episode is women who lead. And the fact that I'm sitting here with two amazing women who ran for municipal offices. I want to ask you, Sofia, what was the inspiration behind you running? Like, why did you feel a calling to run?
I guess it started as a profession. I'm a registered nurse. Profession, my career as a registered nurse started 20 years ago. And I worked 20 years as a mental health nurse. And about 10 years ago, I moved to Shelburne. And I noticed that there was a lack of services for mental health and addiction. And from then, that started my curiosity. I said, you know what, we need to have more access to services here. And I said, the only way and the gatekeeper to actually get these services here is to get involved. And that's when I decided to just put my hat in and says, hey, let the chips fall and take that plunge. You know, it was a big transition, and when I brought it to my family, they're like, go ahead. You know, you've had all this leadership skill for all these years. And like I said, working in mental health for 20 years, I see there's a need, definitely a need, especially, you know, you're moving from a city where you have access to care left, right, and center, and you come into a small town and there's lack of access.
Yes.
And I always think about the family members that, you know, that need these direct access to care for services, and then they have to go elsewhere to access these services. So that's when I decided that, you know what, let me try and get involved and see if I can network and get the access that's much needed here in Shelburne. Yeah.
Powerful.
Yeah.
So kudos for putting your name in the race, because it takes a lot of courage to run for municipal offices, right? Yes. And so the fact that you're able to do that and persevere, you know, despite not winning a seat on council, but the work continues.
Yes.
So where would you like to see, you know, the work continue in Shelburne, you know, despite the fact that you're not on council? Like, what can we do to ensure that we're making sure there's progress?
I think, you know what, I'm very proud that I actually took that plunge, because like you said, there's not a lot of people, especially me being a minority, a black minority in Shelburne.
And a woman.
And a woman, of course. To go in that direction, especially being in healthcare and taking a step into the political ring. I think for me, I'm still going to continue to advocate.
Amazing.
Because there is much needed services that's needed in Shelburne here. And through this journey, I've met amazing ladies that I can network and I can, use my voice and my years of experience to get those services that are needed here. Yeah.
Awesome. And so we're talking about mental health, and then we talked about homelessness and food insecurity. So for you, Trisha, you've had the opportunity to network and work with some amazing organizations to provide additional food support for some needy people in specifically Melanchthon area. What was, the moment that made you realize that there was a need, right? And that you had the power to do something?
I think the moment was when I became vulnerable myself.
Wow.
And so when you become vulnerable, you realize that your world is now opening up to having to be in this position of saying, okay, I have children to feed, and where am I, and how can I make those connections? And, and being homeless myself, because I didn't expect when we moved to Mulmer that, with the what's it called? With the housing costs going up and rising. And even though I put in a bid, I lost my bid for the home that I was renting, and we ended up becoming homeless really quickly. And it was really, it was heart riveting, but it opened up my eyes to another place that I needed to be and to become active in. And I did become active, and I saw, okay, that's something I need to become. So we ended up living in the motel for 3 months.
Wow.
And it was eye-opening to me to see how many people were there and in the same position as I was in. And so it said, okay, fine, Trish, this is something that you can become aware of and you can be active in and whatever. So we ended up finding a place to live, but it was always in the back of my mind about how people were living, and I didn't understand it until I got involved. And then the doors started, one door opened up and another door opened up, and it was just a fluke. I just went up there one day and I saw, okay, like I went and knocked on the door and said, I have a bunch of bread for you. And she's like, and the lady who was like assisting managing at the time, she said, I was just down to my last bread. I gave it away that night.
Oh my goodness, powerful.
Great.
And she says, she goes, you're an angel, because she says everybody here is hungry.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what? And so then that's how it started. It just transformed from that place. And I was like, wow, even though I was working, because I, being an educational assistant, and you could be working and having a job and you don't know when it's going to affect you, right? And you can have two parents working at the same time and you don't know when it's going to affect you, right? And so therefore you're juggling not just the life of working and employment, but you're also juggling your finances, you're juggling your children, you're juggling a whole lot of other things. So it becomes very prevalent to you about when you're in that situation, about how it's going to not just affect you, but how it affects other people. And then the doors just started, and people started having more conversations with me about what is happening out in Dufferin County. And I was just like, wow, this is like, this is home, is home, and this is a thing. Because I used to speak to a lot of business owners and people in Shelburne and in Orangeville, and they're like, is there homelessness? I don't see it.
Exactly.
And I'm just like, where are you?
Yes, right.
What are you not seeing? You need to get out. And people would say to me, I don't, if they're not on the street, I don't see it. And I'm just like, wow. So we, it's unveiling people's ideas of what they think homelessness means, right? And getting into that deeper conversation. And it was just one thing after another. Like I started as an EA, and working with neurodiversities.
That's amazing. I love the fact that, you were able to talk about your own vulnerability and how that allowed you to now reach out and give a helping hand to others in our community. So that itself is inspiring. We're going to take a short break and we're going to come back to this conversation. So here we are with Trisha Linton and Sofia Ceddes, and we're talking about women who lead. So join us. We'll be taking a short break, and stay tuned.
Sunday. City TV invites you to music's biggest night.
Just like this, I don't know why, but I feel like
Music's legends come together for one star-studded night, saluting the best of the best in the music industry. The 65th Annual Grammy Awards, Sunday, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific, on City TV. Or stream on City TV Plus, the app, or citytv.com.
This is Rogers TV.
Welcome back to In Conversation with Alethia. So we left off having an amazing conversation with Trisha Linton talking about homelessness and food insecurity right here in Dufferin County. And she talked about her own vulnerability. So I want to take it back to you, Trisha, and pick up the conversation from the moment that you realized that there were others in Dufferin County who needed support. How were you able to make that connection and give a helping hand?
I think I had a connection actually through social services in Grey County.
Okay.
They reached out to me, and then that conversation started, and how they can participate and help because they heard my name and they had gotten my information, and then it went from that to a bigger conversation with you and with the mayor of Linton, and then it went to a bigger conversation with the different organizations out there that understand homelessness and understand the food insecurities that is happening out there, and I was just like, this is really bigger than myself, right? And I go, okay, so the purpose in me of going through this journey, right, was for me to become more aware and to me to have more understanding and compassion to those that really don't have it within themselves to say, I need help. Here's my extending hand and I need help, right? And so it was amazing that I would have great conversations with different organizations and they were willing to connect with me, not that I'm being paid by them, but they were willing to connect with me to say, okay, this is what we're prepared to do. This is how we are going to help to support. This is what's happening. And if you can do more, that would be awesome, and we will support you in that. So that was an awesome thing to happen. I was so amazed by the wonderful warmth of all the organizations out there.
Incredible. And again, this is what leadership is all about, right? You see an opportunity and a need in our community and you take the lead and make things happen. So we talked about earlier, the fact that both of you ran for municipal offices. And I want to go back and touch on some of those challenges and the way forward. Right, so I'm going to go over to you, Sofia. What are one challenge that you experienced during your election campaign, and then I'll hand it over to Trish.
I think for me, one of the major challenges that I had was not being, being rooted in Shelburne. I actually moved to Shelburne 10 years ago. So of course you're moving into a new community and you're not really knowing everyone. Right. So it was for me to say, okay, what do I do? What do I do best? How can I reach out to the people here in Shelburne? And I know there's one thing that everybody has in common. There's mental illness, and it doesn't matter what color you are, what nationality you are, it affects everyone. And when I see there was a need here, I decided that, okay, all right, I'm going to use that as my platform to go forward. Perfect. So coming in, it was just like I said, the challenge is like, how am I going to sell myself or, let everyone know who I am? And I think that was my first challenge, and I decided just, do what you do best. What you've been doing for 20 years, advocating for mental health. And
that challenge was definitely an opportunity because it created that platform now for you to...
Yeah, and I met a lot of wonderful people on the way. I was able to connect with the workers from Family Transition Place, which actually gave me more information in regards to their services, the gaps that are there. And, from there, just trying to reach out to other communities and agencies to see how best we can actually get these supports here.
Oh my gosh, inspiring, inspiring. Oh my goodness, Trisha, one challenge.
If I had to be honest, I think it was my own fear.
Oh.
Yes, fear can be very crippling.
Yes, it was my own fear. And, Mayor Lisa Post was fantastic. She encouraged me. She would send me messages. You got this. You could do it. You got to go door to door. And I'm like, I don't want to go door to door.
Yes.
And it's like you start it with great intentions, right? It's like, yes, I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to be an activist. I'm going to be a counselor. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And then you start realizing the work that needs to be done.
Yeah.
And then you're sitting back and you're like, okay, am I good enough for this? Do I measure up? Can I really get my message out there that this is what I am and this is how I want to contribute to my community. Yep. My community is not Shelburne, it's Amaranth. It's a farming community. I love farming. I love my family and I, we have this thing where we want to know that our food comes within 25 radius, miles or kilometers from where we live. We want to be understanding that how healthy it is to have homegrown food, and support hobby farmists and stuff like that. So we are very much aware, but I didn't really, I allowed myself to sit there and say, oh gosh, what did I get myself into?
Oh my goodness.
Why am I here? And the best, it gets the best of you. Because if you don't really have the supports to say that you can do this, it becomes a very lonely place very quickly. Right?
But when you talk about fear though, fear is not isolated to just you, right? I'm sure, we've all had our moments of fear. I've had my moments of fear, and I'm actually just reading Michelle Obama's latest book, and in it she talks about her own fears. Her own fears. If she had let her fear rule her, her husband would not have been the president, right? And so as a woman, we often, have this challenge of just getting over our own fears, and look at the amazing things that you were both able to do by getting uncomfortable, right?
Exactly.
And not letting your fear lead you. Yeah, that's quite powerful. What would you say to yourself now that you've gone through the process of running for office and doing all of these other amazing things and starting your own company, Cedar Table Talk? You had to get over that fear. What would you say to yourself now?
I don't know what I would say to myself now. To me, to be honest with you, it's like this part of my life has now gone past. I've now gotten over this. But what I would say is that as much as I feared, when I looked at the numbers of how many people voted for me, it was like, what did I really stop myself from? Right? What was I really, really afraid of? What was the deeper connections? And to all those that were voted for me, thank you.
Amazing.
Right? Because I didn't even have confidence in myself, but I spoke from my heart as to what I was seeing in my community and all those major connections in those people. Because when people call you and they have their concerns, like I had really great conversations with people in my community that were concerned about their wetlands and concerned about their property and concerned about the soil and how their food was being, how they were servicing their community in terms of food and the growth. And really wanted to stay a farming community and what that meant to them. So it was a wonderful thing to have those deep, meaningful conversations. And you think you'd be on the phone for 20 minutes. Well, I could talk. So 20 minutes became 2 hours.
Oh my goodness.
But it was meaningful conversations, and I thank them for educating me, because you need to be vulnerable to allow yourself to have those open conversations. It's not just about, I want your vote. It's about, how can we connect on a deeper level, right?
And build those relationships.
And build the relationship, and me getting to know you, not just on a phone call, but if I see you out on the street, I want to be able to say, hey, it was wonderful. How are you doing today? How are you feeling today? Because mental health is a big issue, and a lot of people did call me about their mental health, right? And sometimes living on a farm is a very lonely place, right? The struggle is real.
That is very true. And I want to turn it over to you, Sofia. So how were you able to overcome your fear, and what would you do differently?
Wow, I think, my family believed in me. And I saw that, especially my mom. When I told my mom, she was my biggest cheerleader, my daughter and my cousin. They were like, yeah, go for it, go for it. And I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? You're a nurse. What are you doing? But again, the need is seeing the need, knowing that I can make a difference. That kind of, led me and actually, kept me going. And after having these conversations with one of the nurses from CMHA, and she started talking about, this is great that what you're doing, because there are gaps.
Absolutely.
And there is a need for that. That kept me going to say, okay, I can do this. And again, when I looked at the numbers, I was like, girl, you got this.
Yes, absolutely.
There is a need.
Yeah.
And so I think moving forward, I'd continue, like I said, there was a need for that. And it's just a drive. And I guess for me is the journey I'm going on is networking with everybody else and just trying to meet other people.
Definitely.
And, getting all the key players in that can make that change. Yeah.
Brilliant. And I love the fact that you campaigned on a mental health aspect, because especially when it comes to our Black community, it's not talked about enough, right? And a lot of our young people in particular are suffering, right? And so we need to talk about it. And I'm a firm believer is until you have the conversations out in the open, then nothing can be solved for, because there's no one there to solve for it, right? Exactly. So kudos to you, kudos to both of you for bringing, these critical issues to light.
Can I get back to something?
Absolutely.
So you talked about family. So my first debate, I saw the numbers and I'm like, this is not real, right? This is not real, because it was on Zoom, right? So I'm looking at the debate and I'm seeing Linton.
Amazing.
There was from anywhere from Barbados to Trinidad, and cousins, and everyone was on there and being supportive, like thinking they were supporting me, but actually they made me even more nervous. But just to say that, yes, family's very, very, very supportive, but it was nice to see that people from different parts of the world were on listening to me. Not that I really wanted that.
One of the things that I want to touch on, because you're both moms of young women, how did they receive, the fact that you ran for office? Like, how did they take that? I'm sure they were proud.
My older daughter, she was so excited. Oh. She was actually at my debate, and she was sitting in the front seat, and she's like, you got this, Mom, you got this.
Love it, love it.
And she was so proud of me. Even today when I told her, I was, this is what I'm going to be doing. She goes, oh my God, Mom. And when you thought it was done, I told you.
Love it.
She goes, Mom, this is wonderful. My younger daughter, she's like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, are you really going to? I'm like, yeah.
Love it.
I'm going to be out there. She's like, oh my gosh. But in the background, she was at her work telling everybody, hey, my mom's running for council. So,
love it. 30 seconds, Trisha.
Can I say my household represents all of the parties in Canada? So, my daughter, who's very, very whatever, she, my eldest was very supportive, my youngest was very supportive, but this is home, our home is naturally a political debate. So I feel like I'm in Parliament every single day.
Oh my gosh, I love it. That's awesome. Both of you were absolutely amazing. Thank you so much, Trisha, for sharing your time with us and sharing your journey. Sofia, it's an honor as well. Thank you for sharing your journey with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It was a pleasure.
Awesome. So here we have it, women who lead right here in Dufferin County. We have Trisha Linton and Sofia Ceddes sharing their experience on the campaign trail with us in Dufferin County. Thank you so much for tuning in, and see you next time.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line. Email us or connect with us on social media.
Online betting is booming. Booyah! Woo! Oh, yeah! You can